What's up, everybody? I am Jesse, or GameOverJesse as all of you may know me. Today we have a special guest with us for the very first time, Maya.
Hi.
Which is really cool. My little brother's best friend is a girl named Maya. So every time I think of Maya, I think about that. Anyways, we also have returning Ilya and Daniel. And me. I guess I'm returning too. I don't know. Anyways, today we're going to be talking about a list on svg.com. Things in Zelda you only notice as an adult. So we're going to go through this and kind of just give our thoughts on some of the stuff that they put together, and whether we like it, dislike it. It's something a little bit different than the typical theory or rumor list that we go through, so I thought it might be interesting. So, Ilya, starting us off this time, do you have one picked out?
Yes. The one I picked is Hyrule's economy makes no sense. I still don't understand American economy to this day, so I still don't get it, right? So Mario, it says Mario had his coins and Simon Belmont had money bags that were improbably hidden inside candlesticks, but the Zelda franchise was one of the first major video game franchises to introduce a fully functional economy. From the very first game, the shiny, irresistibly collectible rupees weren't just there for bonus points. You could use them to buy weapons and power-ups, but nobody at Nintendo ever bothered to sit down and make the economy make sense. It's pretty weird that most Hylians keep their money in a ceramic pot that they leave unattended outside their houses, but on one level, that's easy to explain. Considering how often an evil army rolls through Hyrule, it's not likely a bank would offer a whole lot of protection anyway. If, however, a heavily armed child in a green miniskirt rolls up into our homes, shattered those jars by throwing them against the wall, scooped up the change and left, we'll probably be a little upset about it. Not so for the people of Hyrule, who take this little bit of grand larceny in stride. Maybe they're comforted by the fact that you can find rupees pretty much everywhere. They even pop out of the ground when you cut grass. And it's even weirder than the whole ceramic bank situation. A currency so common that you can find a handful of them in the yard every time you go outside makes them effectively worthless. Forget about Ganon. The real danger to Hyrule is that they're about 3 weeks away from complete economic collapse. Oof. This is one of those things that you just kind of have to be like, I'm not going to think about it.
Yeah.
I'm not going to think about how this works, because it clearly doesn't.
I'm already thinking in my head, though, because, like, counterpoint, well, one, there are banks. We've seen it in at least Majora's Mask. They have a bank. And two, it explains that the reason rupees are, like, hidden in places are because the Minish hide them there for children.
That is true.
So, I mean, just like there's just an abundance of them. It totally is a broken economy, but some of the things have a weird, if not like kind of shoehorned in explanation, if nothing else, but still an explanation.
Yeah.
But still, there is a lot of that whole just going in and doing a lot of property damage. So I hope there's a Hylian insurance company.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's one thing that I think of is when Skyward Sword came out, there was an interview with Aonuma where he said that in previous Zelda games, there's never been a real focus on like rupees or anything. So he wanted to give like spending money a purpose, or spending rupees. He wanted to give the rupees a purpose in Skyward Sword, which you can pay to upgrade your items and stuff like that. And the rupees in that game, especially at the beginning, are definitely not as easy to come across as in other games.
Yeah.
That's funny, as I don't know if you guys have been watching, I've been streaming Zelda 1 on Twitch on Tuesdays and Wednesdays. And that's one of the struggles. I keep having to grind for rupees because it's hard to get enough rupees to buy anything that you need. And then I feel bad because I'm like, sorry, this is not interesting to watch, guys. I'm just going around killing Octoroks trying to get money, but
yeah,
it's hard to get rupees in that game. Pretty much just that game, though.
just that one. And
Just that one.
Ocarina of Time. I always, after I found out about it, I always liked running up the chain on the bridge and then jumping off to get the rupees. So I would always do that, and then like Majora's Mask has like giant rupees hidden around, like the silver rupee in the chest for like 100. Anyways, the second thing with Breath of the Wild, they carried on from giving rupees a purpose in Skyward Sword, or trying to make it seem like they had a purpose. And Breath of the Wild, they made it so that you almost never find them in random places like you do the other game. You have to like sell stuff or like dig for ore or like diamonds and stuff to sell them, and that's mostly how you come across rupees in that game. You can't like...
I mean, it's... Jesse, sorry, I'm just gonna step away. Apparently someone's knocking on my door.
It's me.
I don't know who the hell wants to visit me right now.
It's Miyamoto.
But carry on, okay?
Yes. I just imagine it's... did you guys see... And again, getting off topic, but there was, whenever the Nintendo Wii came out, there was the commercial with Miyamoto and Iwata where they would knock on the door and hold out the Nintendo Wii and be like, "We would like to play."
Yeah, I've seen memes on it.
Yeah, it's just like one of those things that's like, if they really did that, first,
I'd be like, "Yeah, come in."
Yeah.
I'd faint.
Anyways, Maya, do you have yours picked out?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So, I was thinking of the Master Sword is a tool of the oppressor, and that's it's a nice picture of Ganondorf there. It says, to say that the Zelda games portray Link as a hero is understating things by a pretty wide margin. He's not just a hero, he's the hero. The hero of Hyrule, the hero of time, the hero of legend, and so on. If you got a noun, he's the hero of it. But is he really? Most of that heroic reputation comes from the way that he defeats Ganondorf and saves Princess Zelda, which is all the explanation you need if you're playing the games as a kid. When you grow up and read, say, any history book ever, you hopefully realize that propping up an absolute monarchy isn't the best course of action. At best, Link's maintaining the status quo, and as we can see from the games, that includes a kingdom where sentient non-human creatures like the Zora and Gorons are segregated, maybe even confined to their own kingdoms. Ganondorf, on the other hand, that dude was born to a tribe of people who wandered the desert while Hylians lived fat on lush farmland of Hyrule, who clawed his way up from nothing, seized a third of the all-powerful magical forest that had been kept hidden from the common man by the orders of the elite, and tried to overthrow a supposedly benevolent dictatorship. Face it, folks, that's basically Luke Skywalker, right down to the desert. And I was like, oh my god, I just realized that now. Like, oh my god, like, that's insane. Like, I never had even thought about, like, other than Breath of the Wild, I never had even thought about Gorons are just at, you know, Death Mountain, or you know, Zoras are just at the Zora domain. You know, there wasn't really a lot of anybody else anywhere. You might see, like, a random Goron, right, chilling, lifting a rock in Ocarina of Time, right? But other than that, you never see them around each other. You never see them doing anything with each other, right? So it's like reading that for the first time and thinking, wow, yeah, that's kind of a messed up little situation that they live in there. That's not too great.
Was it Miyamoto?
Yeah, he wanted.
They came with a 15-year-old Nintendo Wii and was like, "We would like to play."
Yeah, and then that was just like a Trojan horse. 'Cause then they came in, and then they basically pushed me against the wall, and they said, like, stop telling everyone all this stuff. Stop giving them information. And I'm like, why, Miyamoto? Why don't you want me to talk about Nintendo? Why do you want me to talk about, you know, Zelda stuff and, like, what could be happening? And he goes, we haven't made these announcements yet. It's a secret to everybody. Oh. And then they left. So they just packed up and left. And I'm like, wait, I thought you wanted to play the Wii Sports. So they took the Wii with them, and they took one of my Wii remotes. They're like, I'm taking this. So
you can have the batteries.
They left a motion control though. It's really weird.
Yeah. So I don't know. I feel very upset about that whole interaction.
Sorry
Yeah.
you had to go through that.
Maybe they were just upset that the one person who actually worked for Nintendo was off the podcast
Oof.
today.
Well, maybe that's why. Maybe they showed up at her door first.
Yeah. It's like
She's not really sick. She just got threatened.
that is the story. No, they showed up, seen she was sick. She blamed it on you. So all right, I'm glad we built this story, this completely true story.
Oh my gosh.
100% completely true story that actually happened.
Non-fiction.
Don't question it. All right, so we're talking about the Master Sword being the oppressor, or like the weapon of the oppressors. So the
To be fair to the whole segregated races thing,
Yeah.
in that case,
That one's kind of
Gorons
legit.
probably can't live in the water, except that one at the bottom in Twilight Princess would even. And Zoras probably wouldn't do well on Death Mount.
True enough. But like, you
To
think
be
that
fair
they,
to that.
you think that they would like go to, I don't know, like the Hyrule Field or something, and have like a party each year or something, celebrate their friendships with each other. But no, they don't know each other. They're not allowed to hang out apparently in that world.
so
There are some, like, in Breath of the Wild, like, if you go to Zora's Domain, there is, like, a Goron
Yeah.
there in the shop. And then
I said you were gone, you know, answering Miyamoto and everything, but I was saying
sorry.
every game except for Breath of the Wild, there was basically it's pretty. I'd never thought about it before, but it's pretty actually segregated. Like you can find like a random Goron or Zora out in the wild like every once in a while, but it's not like, you know, you're interacting with each other like the heroes from Breath of the Wild, you know.
yeah,
No, it's totally true.
if the Zora were really evil, because apparently all of like the major water source in Hyrule comes from the Zora, so they could just like hog all of the water and not let everyone would thirst.
Yeah, everyone would just die of dehydration.
Yeah. So there.
Well, what happened in Ocarina of Time when Link was a grown-up? The river, the Hylian Lake was dried up, right? They were hogging all the water. Nobody was allowed to get all the water anymore. I'm telling you.
Yeah.
That's the thing.
Attention.
So there was a video that I wrote the script for, but I haven't finished like the actual video portion of it. But it was an idea that I had of like 5 major problems in Zelda games that could easily be solved, and one of them was like in Wind Waker, Ganondorf gives his excuse for trying to take over everything, and he basically said that like they were all forced to live in the desert and it was really hot and everything. And my thought was someone could have just taught them the Song of Storms and they would all be fine.
Yeah.
Oh.
Like,
I never thought about it like that.
Yeah.
also, like, Ganondorf says that's his motivation, but when he takes over Hyrule, he doesn't bring the Gerudo with him. They still live in the desert in
That's a
of
good
time.
point.
Like he's like, yeah, no, my people are oppressed. I want to go and, you know, give them a better life in the green fields of Hyrule. And then he takes over, and he's like, okay, just gonna wreck some stuff, and they're all still there in the desert.
That was just like his. That was just like his. Yeah, I was just about to say, like a politician. That was just his line, you know.
Yeah.
That's what he said.
Grab your sympathy before he, you know, assaults 2 10-year-old children.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
the
So-
That scene in Wind Waker was always creepy when Zelda's like in the bed and he's like talking about his whole history. I'm like, the older I get, the creepier it is. I don't like it.
Yeah.
Whoa, that's a lot of emojis.
so the 2 more things that I have to say about this is one, I think Majora's Mask was the first one where we see different races kind of living in different areas, like not so much, but like we know that the Zora band sometimes go to the milk bar to play. We know that there is the one Goron who's like trying to bust the rock to the ranch. There's the other Goron who like
Oh, no,
brings
that's not
the-
a Goron. The one at the ranch? At Romani Ranch?
oh no, you have to
It's a
take it
Hylian.
there. But
You gotta be the Goron.
The thought is it would take a Goron to carry the bomb keg to that spot. And there's also the Goron who like wanders into West Clocktown? East Clocktown.
Yeah. The one
For
who has
the-
your name.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and then you just kind of steal his reservation. So, like, it gives the idea that maybe some of the races do wander around, but that's Termina, not Hyrule.
True.
Yeah,
So
and
just
then
realized then that means there are 2 Gorons named after Link, or with the same name as Link.
Yeah.
One named after him, but one that just coincidentally has the same name.
yeah.
So there's 3 Links.
Twilight Princess expands on it a bit more because there is the Goron. I always think of the Goron in Hyrule Castle Town. That's like you go into the building and you can go up and like look out the window and there's the Goron standing there.
But there's a few of them around Castletown.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then Breath of the Wild's the game that really pushes diversity around the kingdom.
I mean, even Terrytown, where it like includes basically all things, right? It's
And
like
the
all
music
species.
changes as you bring more people in,
Yeah.
creatures in.
And the
United.
I'm gonna say in my head canon, the main reason for this is like the Zora kind of eat the same thing as humans, but the Gorons definitely don't, because they're eating like rock.
Eat rocks.
Yeah, they're eating like rock steaks or whatever it's called, savory rocks. So when actually there was a meme or something that I was watching that's like, why were the Gorons going to die of starvation if they couldn't get into Dodongo's cavern because of it being blocked off by rocks when there's rocks everywhere? And at the bottom of the meme, it was like, well, when you eat a salad, you don't just cut your grass and eat it.
Yeah.
So
Wait,
like,
you don't?
yeah,
You don't just eat grass off the ground.
yeah, it's like it's special grass. So like they had
Yeah, I've
to
been
eat
doing
the
things
special
wrong.
rocks. But it makes sense that like in Hyrule Castle Town, they're mostly going to have the food for the humans, whereas like you're not going to go to Goron City if you're a Hylian to get food, because it's
True.
like here's a rock and more rock. So
Well, it'd just be rude to not eat it at that point.
Oh,
I mean,
yes.
you already...
yeah,
Well, doesn't Daruk talk about giving a rock, like sirloin rock or something, to Link 100 years in the past, and Link's like trying so hard to figure out how to eat it. I think that's like in his diary in Champion's Ballad.
Oh, that's cute. I don't think
you're
I've
right.
ever seen it. That's really cool.
yeah. And there's the one side
But did he
quest
do it?
where you have to bring the Goron food that like energizes the person to finish working.
He
I
digs up a
forgot.
shrine for you.
Yeah. All right, Ilya, do you have your thing picked out?
I already did mine.
Oh, what? Oh yeah, you were first, Daniel.
The economy.
Daniel.
Okay, which ones just to recap so I don't choose the same one
Oppression.
that everyone else said?
Economy.
Oppression.
Oh
Oppression.
no! So the second thing I wanted to talk about, it
Great
says Ganondorf being like Luke Skywalker and like being born or whatever and like oppressed, and then he rises to the top or whatever. But he was born a king. So
Yeah.
That's true.
that's the other thing that I wanted to mention is like he's born into royalty, and then his parents are magical. So if he wanted something, they could just be like, okay, well, like if he's like, hey, I want to go to Lake Hylia today, they could just now you're
And
in
that's
Lake
the thing too,
Hylia.
is like, sure, they lived in the desert, right? And he complains in Wind Waker, during the day the desert was too hot, during the nighttime the desert was too cold. Either way, like it was deadly. But the Twin Rova, literally, their powers, one can generate heat, the other one can generate ice. So it's like,
Well, maybe it's because they knew
They
they'd be
easily-
raising Ganon in the desert. Gosh.
but they could easily have improved the quality of life.
Yeah,
what I'm
like
saying.
the
true.
ice house in Breath of the Wild is a really good idea.
Yeah, see, it's-
Well, I really like in Breath of the Wild, like the Gerudo village like looks amazing, right? Like it looks like somewhere I'd want to live there. Like I love the water running over all the houses. Like it looks really cool.
aqueducts and everything.
Exactly, like it's awesome, right? But then you think about Gerudo from Ocarina of Time, where you're just going into like building after building, trying to what's that? You're like trying to like get people out of prison or something like
Oh,
that.
yeah,
There's
the-
like
the
jail cells and
corridors.
stuff.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And then when I think about that, I'm like, man, no wonder Ganondorf hates Link. like he had to be raised and like all these women are crazy. Like I don't want to have to deal with that either. So I think that when you're born like one out of a billion males out of females, right? And you're praised as a god, even if you're living in a tent, right? That's going to be like a really good situation, but at the same time, it's not like that's the best place to be living in. It makes sense that he would want more from that situation, you know? Plus he was like, oh, I'm the chosen one. I'm the one male to exist ever. Well, sort of, but like, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but it's funny, like, as a side note, that difference in the Gerudo's, like, fortress in Ocarina of Time versus Gerudo Town in Breath of the Wild, and you see how, like, almost like how far they've come as a culture. I don't know, like there's a lot of development there like that. I love that, seeing like that, the way they've improved their situation, and they go from like what is essentially considered like just a band of thieves to like a proper, they have the whole culture set up in their own town and everything. It's like, I like it. So
all right, Daniel, do you have yours picked out?
Yes, right. So there was one that I thought about doing, and then it didn't seem rated E for everyone to me. So
the Great Fairy one.
We're talking about.
No, go ahead and do the Great Fairy one.
Oh, okay. Well, then I can't do the
Since
other one.
that was the one that you
so
picked
good.
up.
Okay. Well, I'll just give a quick shout out. The other one I was gonna do was
Maybe
about
I
Death
can
Mountain's name, but sure if you want. But this one is the Great Fairies are absolutely fetish materials.
Kids, mute the video until Daniel taps his head.
Yes. So it reads, the Zelda games have always been a little weird about the Great Fairies, going all the way back to the angular, mostly naked version that showed up.
Oh,
in Ocarina
Ilya
of
did
Time
leave.
with Breath of the Wild. Oh, poor child.
E for everyone.
E for everyone.
Except Ilya.
Yeah.
It's not the sort of thing you'd notice as a kid, and in fact, the sight of Link recoiling from the over-the-top smooches of a giant woman who lives inside a huge flower probably seemed like hilarious slapstick more than anything else. If, however, you're playing that game as an adult whose time on the internet has taught you sort of terrible thing that you didn't necessarily want to know, you know exactly what's going on. Those fairies aren't there for upgrades. They're absolutely there to satisfy someone's not-so-secret fantasies. Giantess fetishes. The giggles and moaning, Link's fruitless struggle against their inescapable but loving hugs, and the fact that they leave him spent and exhausted at the end of the transaction, yeah, that's 100% a sex thing. And the way he gets sucked under the surface of a toothy pond, there's even a little bit of a vor. I've actually never heard that term before. Vor.
Don't just move on. Just move
Okay. Link even pays handsomely for experience. Not that we're judging. You have to respect the hustle of getting a giant woman kink to be such a prominent part of one of the biggest games of all time. And if nothing else, it adds a whole new selling point for a very specific audience. As a side note, it reminds me when they were doing interviews for like when they were reporting or doing Twilight Princess HD, and Aonuma made the remark about Telma being a strong character, and then he like kind of blushedly was like, I would enjoy being scolded by a woman like that. And I'm like, Aonuma, like put it away, man.
No.
Put it away.
Yeah, so that's in the chat, Zelda Collector says, Death by Snoo Snoo. That's a Futurama reference.
Oh my god.
Yeah, pretty much Death by Snoo.
That also, so Aonuma's comment reminds me of an interview. I want to say this was actually on a Nintendo Direct a long time ago, which is why it stuck out so much to me. But it was Platinum Games, the people that made Bayonetta. So,
yes, that's Platinum.
Yeah, they were talking. It was an interview, like a behind-the-scenes development thing. They did the same thing with Zombie U when it came to the Wii U. So it was all of the the art director, the graphic designers, the gameplay people, everyone. And one of them, I think it was the person who was actually in charge of the game, who was also an artist on the game. And they had asked him what his favorite part was. And he looked at the screen behind him, and it was just a close-up of Bayonetta's tight clothing, I guess. And he was like, it's my job to like make sure everything is detailed properly, and it's a really good job. So yeah, it was not
developers are horny.
it was not subtle at all.
Yeah.
That's what I'm.
And that's that's bigger, literally massive women, kind of like how the Great Fairies are in Breath of the Wild are kind of a big thing in Japan too, specifically. That's an actual thing. And so as soon as I saw what the Great Fairies were looking like in Breath of the Wild, I was like, they did that on purpose. That's fan service right there if I've ever seen it.
Yep.
All right.
Well, I find them less disturbing than the N64 Great Fairies.
Oh, me too.
Yes, actually, though.
By a lot.
Less disturbing and less annoying, but yeah, it's definitely a really weird sex thing, in general.
Not when you're a kid, though. When you're a kid, you're just like, that's cool.
Yeah, and it's funny because I was playing Breath of the Wild, and my son, 5, he saw a Great Fairy, and he's like, oh, she looks very beautiful, and he kind of just moved on, and I was like, oh, that's very sweet, and I was like, I don't know now.
You just might have awakened something in your kid that he might not realize.
That's the thing. I'm like, I don't know if this is gonna be a thing now, or
well, even
he's
the
doing it
Twilight
from a very
Princess
innocent,
fairies, they're calm, but they're topless.
completely nude.
I mean, they have their hair really long, but I'm just like, what? The only time the Great Fairies were not creepy was Wind Waker, except the main Great Fairy is a little girl with a doll.
Yeah,
she's
super
creepy.
creepy.
Which is its own kind of creepy.
Yeah.
The 2D games had interesting fairies.
They were very,
They
very
looked like actual
yeah.
fairies.
Those were
Yeah.
actual fairies.
Yeah.
the old school games, the fairies
Tinkerbell.
are very vanilla design in comparison to what Zelda's been going for lately.
Yeah.
So
Hyrule
Again,
Warriors.
beauty for everyone.
Yeah. I remember when I first seen the Hyrule Warriors Great Fairies, it was just like the
It's just the
Ocarina of
N64
Time,
ones,
but
but
in
up-res.
HD. Yeah, it's like, they made them more detailed. Sure.
and less jagged, I guess.
Yeah.
You know, but it's still super uncomfortable.
All right.
Just-
Well, our final thing on this list. Couldn't we call it Nice Flowers Mountain instead? While Hyrule has taken many forms over the years, from the pastoral kingdom of Ocarina of Time, I hope that's how you pronounce that word, to the broken wasteland of Breath of the Wild, but there's one piece of the landscape that remains consistent: Death Mountain, the ominous volcano that looms over Hyrule with a ring of clouds around its peak. It's intimidating, foreboding, threatening, and not that bad, actually. Don't get it wrong, it's not exactly pleasant. At the very least, it's usually an active volcano, and it's often populated with stronger enemies. But you'll only find the end of the game level bad guys were in the first Legend of Zelda. In most other games, it's just a place you pass through on the way to more dangerous territory. More often than not, you'll find friendly allies there in the form of the Gorons. Either way, Death Mountain seems like a pretty dramatic name, but we suppose Unpleasant Mountain wouldn't look great on a map. So my thoughts on this is it is purposefully named. That way, so when I think of the landscape of Hyrule, I always think of the Ocarina of Time or Twilight Princess style map, to where it's Kakariko Village and then Death Mountain. So with Kakariko Village being one of the more populated places, to keep the kids from going up to Death Mountain, they even have the guard there with the gate that you need permission from the royal family to go there. So I think it's just a way to be if they called it, the title of that was, couldn't we call it Nice Flowers Mountain? I think that would be oh, well, now there's kids going up